Today, we're walking through all the steps on how to make yourself a beaded scrunchie, and they're perfect to give as gifts at the holidays. Welcome, I do sewing and DIY related content, and today we are making beaded scrunchies. So to do this, you are going to want some sort of cotton or woven material fabric. I am using Christmas cotton for this, and we are going to be cutting out a long rectangular strip. I like to make my rectangular strip be about 3.5 inches by 18 inches, but you could definitely make that wider if you wanted a really large, like chunky scrunchie, or you can make it thinner if you wanted a very thin scrunchie all the way around. I would recommend though not having it be smaller than 2 inches for the width, as that just makes it a little harder for turning. Now for this video, I am making 2 beaded scrunchies. I have this one with this green Christmas fabric, and then I have this white fabric with little snowflakes on it. They're kind of hard to see, so I think it'll be perfect for adding some beads to it and just giving it another design. Now as we go through this, I will be showing you how to make the scrunchie, but if you want even more details about how to just make a scrunchie in general, I do actually have a pattern on my Etsy store up and available. So I will include a link to that below, and there's another video on how to make yourself a scrunchie that goes into even more detail in case you just want some more steps along the way. Once you have your fabric cut out, you are then going to cut out a 7 to 8 inch piece of elastic. I go back and forth. If you want to add it a little bit larger, that way it's easier to sew at the end, you could definitely do that, and then you just cut off the extra. Now what we're going to do is actually begin sewing our scrunchie. So with the right sides of your fabric together, we are going to be folding this over so that it's like hot dog style, so the long way, and then we're going to begin sewing this. So I am leaving about 1.5 inches of fabric unsewn at the end, and then I have my needle, and I'm just going to take that straight seam all the way down the scrunchie tube. When I get to the end, I am again going to leave about 1.5 inches of fabric not sewn, and this is going to allow us to really get the scrunchie tube effect when we turn this right side out. Now I'm going to repeat all these steps for my green scrunchie as well, so this is a little easier to see that I'm bringing the right sides of the fabric together, and then I'm going to be pinning this and then leaving that little bit of fabric at either end unpinned so that I know not to sew there. So now I'm just going to pin the rest of this up. Again, you could do this with pins, you could do them without pins depending on how comfortable you are with the material, and then I'm going to start and stop at that first pin and last pin. So leaving that little bit of fabric on either end, I'm not sewing that and just sewing all the way from one pin to the other. So as you can see, I have that little bit of fabric behind the needle so it's not being sewn, and then I'm just going to take this straight seam all the way down, being sure to backstitch at the beginning and the end so that it's nice and secure. Once I have this done, I'm going to go ahead and start turning these right side out. Now you do not need to do this, but if you have a safety pin, it makes it a lot easier to turn, and if you have some pinking shears, you can actually make it so that it has a really nice and clean look on the inside. I highly recommend this if you're using fabric that's prone to fraying. This will just help it so that when you're turning this right side out, your fabric isn't going to fray and the stitch won't come undone as someone's wearing it over and over and over again. So now I'm just going to put my safety pin through my fabric and then push the safety pin into the fabric and very slowly turn this right side out. So working it with my fingers to get it so that the fabric all starts to be turned through the tube. The cat wanted to help here, so once I got her out of the way, I just continued on, and as you can see, I'm now just able to pull the fabric and it is all turned right side out, and I am now going to repeat all of these steps for the green scrunchie as well, so I can have it turned right side out too. Now it is time to turn our scrunchie into one continuous tube. So I am bringing the right sides of the short ends of the scrunchie tube together. So you can see we have the right sides there, and I am going to pin this, and then I'm going to follow this curve and pin the right sides of the tube together all the way around. Then we are going to just take a straight seam all the way across those short ends. I'm going to repeat this for the white scrunchie as well, and then this is going to allow us to have this tube that we're able to add elastic into. Now I'm just going to go through, take that straight seam, being sure to backstitch at both the beginning and the end, trim off any extra fabric or threads, and then I can kind of just push this inside, and now we have one continuous tube that we'll be able to use for our scrunchies. So now I'm just going to repeat this for the white. So as you can see here, I'm just taking my seam from starting at the top, going all the way down, and doing this on a curve, but being careful, I'm pivoting my fabric along the way, stopping when I need to, and I'm just able to push this fabric back in to get that tube shape. So now it's time for us to add our elastic. I like to use a safety pin, attach it to one end of my elastic, and just guide the safety pin through the scrunchie tube, being careful to note the other end of the elastic. You want to make sure that it is not going all the way through, as we need to keep it outside the hole. So when it starts to get very short like that, what I like to do is I like to grab a pin and just pin that other elastic edge to the fabric. That way I don't have to worry about it coming undone. And then I'm just going to continue guiding my elastic through the scrunchie. Once I have it all the way through, I am then able to bring both ends of the elastic together, and I'm just going to pin those up so that I can take a straight seam across. As you can see, Stuffing had a lot of fun with these scrunchies, and she definitely wanted to help the entire time. So here are those two pieces of the elastic that I have pinned up. So now I'm going to take the pin out. I have the presser foot down on the elastic, and I'm just going to go back and forth. As you can see, I have about almost close to like an inch of elastic on that one edge. I find it a lot easier to work with as I'm able to push both edges of the elastic through. I sew over it about 5 or 6 times, and then I'm just going to repeat this for my other scrunchie as well, just going back and forth multiple times so that I am able to get a nice and secure stitch. Now it's just time to close up these scrunchies. So where we had that opening for where we put the elastic in, I just like to hand sew this closed. So I take a needle and thread and add a little knot at the end of the thread, and I just start to do a whip stitch to close this up. You could definitely use a sewing machine as well. I just think that hand sewing, it gives it a little bit of a nicer look at the end, and you can't see the seam as much compared to if you did a machine stitch. If you are hand sewing, be sure to knot the thread at the beginning as well as the end so that it doesn't come undone. If you want to see a more in-depth video on how to do hand sewing, let me know and I can include one of those as well in the description. Now at this point our scrunchie is complete and it is ready to be used as a scrunchie, but we still need to add some beading to this. So I'm going to finish up this green scrunchie and then we'll get started beading the scrunchies. So for beading, there's lots of different beads you can use. I have a whole video up on different types of beads. For mine, I'm going to be using these glass beads for the green scrunchie. I think they have a really pretty effect. And then I have some of these tiny little seed beads I'm going to be using on my white scrunchie. And I am just going to be doing this in a pattern so that they look like they are kind of laid out all over the scrunchie. So first step is I'm going to take my needle and thread and I'm going to be knotting the thread at the end, very similar to how I did the hand stitching on the scrunchie itself. So just adding that knot, and then I'm going to start just putting some beads on the scrunchie. So for this, I like to lay them out on some sort of either plate, or I'm going to be using this white lid just so that I have them all ready for my use. And then I'm going to find where I want to add the bead onto the scrunchie, being sure I'm only sewing through one layer of the fabric. You don't want it to go all the way through. Then I'm going to add a knot, and then I'm just going to grab one bead onto my needle. So these beads are slightly bigger, so a little easier to use. And then I'm just going to start sewing them on. So this is a very slow process, so I did speed this up. But basically we're just going through, finding places that we want to add the beads to, and then taking our time all the way around. So now let's get a little bit more detailed into what this exactly means. So I'm going to be adding the bead, then I'm going to take a stitch very close to the bead, then I'm going to bring the needle through a little bit further away. So as you can see with this, I have the fabric stretched out so that I'm not doing this like all scrunched up. The reason we want to do that is because the scrunchie, you're going to be stretching it out and then bringing it back together. And if you actually didn't stretch your fabric out while you were doing this, the thread could snap and break and all the beads will come off. So you want to really make sure that as you're going through, you're stretching your fabric as you're going so that it has as much give as it can, so that when the user is, putting it on their hair, wearing it on their wrist, the beads don't come undone and they have a lot of give to it. Now I'm just going to continue doing this all the way around the scrunchie. At any point, if I need to get more string or thread, what I'm going to do is just make a little knot, and then I'm going to just go through, bring my thread all the way in, and then I'm just going to pull it through. As you can see here, I'm doing a tiny little knot with the thread, and then I'm going to put the needle back in and figure out a place for it to come out, and then I'm just going to cut the thread off so that I don't have a tail that's showing through the scrunchie. This is going to give you a nice and clean look, and then as you can see, this is what my scrunchie now looks like. I think the beads all look really nice on it. You cannot see any of the little stitches from the other side, which is what you're going for. So now I'm just going to repeat all of these steps with the tinier seed beads. This took a lot of time, but it does look really fun and very festive at the end. So definitely decide when you're making this, do you have a lot of patience for the seed beads, or do you want to use a slightly bigger bead so that you can get that really nice beaded effect? these are what my scrunchies now look like. I hope you enjoyed this video, and if you do make your own beaded scrunchies, be sure to tag me on Instagram. I'd love to see what they look like. I think that these work out great for holiday gifts or for yourself just as something fun to do. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to like, comment, and subscribe, and let me know what you want to see next. Thanks for watching.